Jasmine, and I hope that you all are doing well. If you are a returning subscriber, welcome back. Thanks for coming back. And if you are a new viewer, hi. Like I said, my name is Jasmine. I am a practicing witch and high priestess and occult enthusiast and divination teacher and YouTuber. I make lots of fun witchy content here on YouTube, so if you're into that kind of thing, check out my channel. And if you could like this video and subscribe, that would be awesome. Thanks. Today's topic is something that I've been kind of toying around with a little bit for a while, actually. And I've been really meditating on this and really trying to kind of put my thoughts together, because I think this is something important that not a lot of occultists, magicians, witches, pagans are really having this sort of conversation about in this dialogue, and that is our role. Okay, so first, before I get too far into this video, I do want to share with you some of my new Hesperia jewelry. If you have not checked out Hesperia, you definitely should. No, this video is not sponsored in any way, but one of my good friends here online had kind of hooked me up with Hesperia, and I'm so grateful for that. So girl, if you're watching, thank you. I've turned several of my friends onto it as well. But basically, I will see if I can maybe link it down in the description, but Hesperia is super cool. They make really nice, fine jewelry. And they occasionally have super awesome sales. And that's kind of what I cashed in on, was their sale. So I got this ring. Which I believe this is their royal eye ring. And then I also got these two necklaces here, which this one is called the Eclipse necklace. It has like a little star and then a little moon pendant. And then this is the Hamsa, which both of these pieces I plan on consecrating and using for ceremonial ritual use and kind of imbuing with magic. The same for the eye as well. So anyway, that is just what I wanted to show you, is some of my new awesome jewelry that I'm super geeked about. It's really hard to come by nice, high quality brass or gold gemstone jewelry or metaphysical jewelry. Not that I have any issue with silver. I love my lunar correspondences as well. And I do love silver, I do. And I enjoy silver, but it's nice sometimes to have a little variety, and it's nice sometimes to have a little bit more of a solar aspect. So I appreciate Hesperia jewelry so much. Oh, for today's topic, this is something that I was kind of inspired by from my own personal New Year spread. And if you guys are interested in my New Year spread, I would be happy to share it with you. So that way you could do it your own, or you're welcome to book a reading with me by following the link down in the description. But per my New Year spread, it incorporates different oracle and tarot aspects. And one of the oracle cards was from the Isis oracle deck that I chose to use, which was the card called Goddess of 10,000 Names. Which this particular card is a card that kind of signifies our different roles in life and who we are in those roles, but more importantly, who we are outside of those roles as well. And so this is something that I've been contemplating on a lot as I'm having some downtime currently. There are, some things going on that I've kind of talked a little bit about here on YouTube and on Patreon more so, that, are pretty personal, and I have a lot of big changes taking place this year. And big changes in honestly a really positive way, like it's not negative or anything, but it is big. And anytime that we have these big monumental sort of transitions in life, it alters and changes things. And sometimes certain things have to die so new things can kind of move in, if you know what I mean. And that's really been a process. Even though these changes are good and exciting, it is also, there's some stress and there's some anxiety in this process, even though it's for my greater good. And these are changes that I want to make. I'm not really going to go into a whole lot of detail right now about the specifics, just because so many things are kind of up in the air and still in the process. And I very much believe in, moving in silence. And I also believe that excellence is quiet. So I may talk about this eventually. I may never talk about this on YouTube. This might only be like a Patreon thing. I don't know yet, but this whole process has really made me sort of analyze a little bit more of who I feel like I am and how I choose to define myself in a magical way, in a spiritual way. And earlier, I came up with this video that you can find on my channel, and it's called Witch vs. Priestess. And I think I have a third category that I would like to add. So this is kind of a follow-up or update video to that video called Witch vs. Priestess. So that video initially was kind of inspired by me interacting with my local wider community here in the physical. And, you know, divinity is definitely a big part of my practice, but I have found through talking with other witches, talking with other magi, talking with other pagans, that for some people it's a much stronger focal point than maybe it is for me. And I don't necessarily think that that's like a negative thing. I think that we all have our own individual path in practice, but I kind of wanted to give a little bit of an update because honestly, my thoughts have changed and my opinions have changed from the original filming of that video. And this is one of the reasons why I like YouTube so much. And kind of like if you've listened to the Magical Tools episode of season 2 on As the Cauldron Bubbles, when I'm talking with my special guest, that's why I love Book of Shadows too, because we can go back and we can look at the growth and we have something physical to show us where we've been, like a Book of Shadows, or like YouTube. I can go back. I've been on YouTube for I don't know how many years, 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. And I can go back and fundamentally, I am not the witch now that I was then. And the witch then is not the witch that I am now. And I think that that's normal. I think that so many people are too prideful to be able to show their growth. And I feel like, you know, we've been through a lot since 2016. And if you've been on my channel for a while, you've probably followed me in this journey. And I appreciate all of your support. But you know, my thoughts and opinions have kind of changed since that first video, and I kind of wanted to talk about that in this video. So I feel like for myself, I tend to serve 3 different roles. And this goes for, you know, my own practice and my own community, and the work that I do. And so yes, I am a witch, of course, absolutely. That is who I am. I very much believe that. I believe that witch down to the fiber of my being. I don't believe that it was ever a choice for me. I think that it's very much in line with my destiny. Now, I could have chosen to not follow this destiny. And who knows what that would have been like. There could have been spiritual ramifications or unhappiness or who knows what. Luckily, I have always been a person who has been able to kind of explore. I mean, growing up, I was always encouraged to explore my own understanding of the divine. And I appreciate my family and my parents allowing me to kind of explore that. I've talked about my background and my upbringing on my channel before, so I'm not going to talk about that here. But to me, witch is who I am. A witch is just as much like who I am as it is also what I do. So to break that down, what I mean is, to me, witchcraft is kind of a noun, person, place, or thing. And witch is who I am. It is who I am, regardless. I do believe that some people are born witches, but I also believe it's a choice as well. Just like I think of when I was in beauty school and I think of hairdressing, there were some people who were so naturally gifted at cosmetology. Maybe they grew up in salons, or maybe they just had a natural knack for it. And there were other people who really had to work and who really had to study. And I identify that same way in the craft as well. You know, to me, witch is who I am. Now, I also choose to practice witchcraft. Not all witches, I believe, who are born witches choose to practice the craft. And it doesn't really make a difference to me if you're born a witch or if you are made a witch, if you will. Like, that's irrelevant, because just like hairdressing, I've met hairdressers who have such a natural talent who do nothing with it. And I've met hairdressers who have had to really work very hard to learn and to, you know, build their skills, and who are amazing hairdressers. So I think the same can be said for witchcraft as well. There are witches who are born witches who really don't do anything with it. You know, they can be very magical, very powerful, very intuitive, very whatever, but yet they don't do anything with it. And then there are witches who, you know, fight tooth and nail to be able to tap into arcane currents and wield magic, and are amazing. I believe that some of the founding fathers, if you will, of the Western occult world were very much made witches, not necessarily born witches, if that makes sense. So I very much think that witchcraft is what I do, and it's also who I am. But like I mentioned in the other video, you know, there's the whole aspect of priestess. Now, I am a high priestess within the SCC, which is the Solar Court Coven. And I'm not going to touch on a whole lot of that here in this video. And I also think too, even if you're not a high priestess, I believe, at least I have found this to be true in our coven, that most of us are priests or priestesses in some way. So here's where I believe the difference is between, we're just going to use the word priestess for the sake of this video, because that's the word that I choose to identify with. This is just as much what I do as it also is what I believe, as opposed to who I am, if that makes sense. So my role as high priestess is to be of service to the community and of service to the coven, essentially. So that's high priestess. But when I'm talking about priestess, to me, this is more about working directly with a higher consciousness, a higher divinity source. This is about working with the gods, the ancestors, the beloved dead, whatever it is to you that you understand as sacred, whatever divinity looks like to you. I believe that the priesthood is about in service of that. So I believe that, you know, kind of a good adjective for this would be devotion. What does devotion look like in your practice? What are you devoted to? Is it nature spirits? Is it your ancestors? Is it the gods? That is what I believe a major difference is between priestesses and witches. Now, sometimes you are both, right? Like, I definitely identify as both. I work with divinity, I honor divinity, I am devoted to divinity. I have multiple different dedications to the gods and my ancestors, literally tattooed into my flesh. I have altars of them. So I view that to me as the priestesshood of working with the divinity. However, I don't necessarily believe that that's completely congruent to witchcraft, because to me, in my opinion, witchcraft is very much, you know, it's a practice. It is who we are, and it's also what we do. But I don't, and this is controversial, maybe yet brave, but I don't necessarily view witchcraft as a religion. I think you can be any religion and practice witchcraft. Now, sure, there might be some religions that frown upon it, but theoretically, you can be any religion and practice witchcraft, right? So another big division is, I believe, witches. True witchcraft to me is not about asking for permission or for forgiveness. I think that a sorceress, a magi, taps into primordial arcane torrents. And I would love to make a whole video on my personal cosmology, because cosmology has been something I've been really interested in lately too, trying to kind of piece together my orthodoxy and orthopraxy, because I'm finding as I'm getting older and as I'm approaching some Saturn return stuff, a lot of my beliefs are really changing, and even in some very radical ways. So maybe I'll make a cosmology video next. Let me know what you think about that. Guys, another big difference is that as a priestess, let's say priestessing to the gods or to the divine or to our beloved dead or whatever, right? Typically there is a devotional aspect to this where we are, I don't necessarily want to use the word worship because I feel like that's become a very dirty word due to religious trauma for some people, but we are feeding the energy. We are honoring the sacredness of this divine archetype. And oftentimes we are making offerings and singing praises and maybe even, writing poetry or music or whatever, dedicating certain acts of our life, like tattoos or dance. I know that those are both really big things for me in terms of connecting to my gods. But yeah, and then sometimes maybe we're asking our spirits to aid us and to help us, but not always necessarily. And I think that as a priestess, you shouldn't just be going to your spirits when you want or need something. This should be something where, you are honoring them on a regular basis, and you can ask them for their guidance, their wisdom, or their aid, but you shouldn't only be going to them when you need something. That's not, in my opinion, the best way to kind of practice this sort of priesthood. Now, on the opposite end of this, the witch, the sorceress, it's not necessarily about working with divinity per se, because being a witch, the gods or spirits or the dead don't necessarily have to play a part. And if they do, that maybe that's some of your priesthood kind of coming into your practice. Because in my opinion, and we're allowed to have different opinions here, so if you don't see it the same way I do, that's okay. But I see witch more as like wielding and bending arcane energy to manifest in the physical. Now, oftentimes the priesthood and, witchcraft can overlap, and priestesses can also practice witchcraft, and they can kind of, tit for tat with each other, but they are separate in my eyes. And I do believe that witch is what and who I am, and the priesthood is what I do. As a high priestess of the SC, that is a role that I serve to my community. And then the priestesshood to me is a role that I serve to the gods and to my spirits. And then, like I said, being a witch is more who I am. Now, I want to add kind of a third notion to this, and that is a prophetess. So I don't know why I didn't add this in the other video. I think I was just kind of talking more about those two facets of orthodoxy, orthopraxy, and, devotional worship, working with the gods, that sort of thing. And then, wielding arcane energy, right? But I think a third category that also is something that I do that is separate from the other categories. Now, it can be connected because I believe that all these little circles can kind of overlap. But a prophetess to me is someone who creates prophecies, who foretells prophecies, who is connected to fate, free will, destiny, these aspects. So as a prophetess, I believe this is something also as a role. I don't necessarily believe it's, who you are. And I know that some people believe that prophets and prophetesses are chosen by gods, and maybe, right? Like we can see different sides here. But when I think of a prophetess, I see that very much as kind of like a big grandiose way of like tapping into your intuition. So if you are someone who provides prophecy, if you are someone who provides seances and prophecies and psychic readings and mediumship to your community, then you are a prophetess. Now, if that is connected to your priestesshood, that's what I'm saying. Some people kind of connect prophetess and priestess together. But I also think that prophetess can be connected to the craft as well. I don't believe that deity or spirits have to be a part of being a prophetess or a prophet. I think that it can also be secular and atheistic. Now, when I say atheistic, let's break that down, because atheist is essentially no deity. It doesn't mean no beliefs at all. I think a lot of people have some pretty strong misconceptions about theism, monotheist, polytheist, hard polytheist, soft polytheist, atheist, duotheist. These are all different ways of understanding the divine. And I personally believe that all of these paths are still valid. So while we might differ to a degree on how we interpret this, I wanted to share this because this is how I interpret myself. So I very much identify with witch, Priestess, Prophetess. And I just kind of wanted to break down my thought process in a video format, because maybe there are some of you who also identify with this sort of language. And maybe there are some of you who identify just as one or as two, or maybe even all three. I would love to hear from you guys what you think of this, between being the witch, the priestess, and the prophetess. And for those of you who are watching, who are also content creators, I would encourage you, and I would love it if you made a video response to this video, where you kind of break down these three concepts that I've kind of outlined here, and tell me where you find your practice at. So I guess that's kind of like my challenge, if you will. I don't know if any other YouTubers will even do this tag, but I just wanted to share it. So yeah, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who's been supporting the channel. I appreciate that so much. Really, really do. Really, really do. And I'm excited for 2022, and I'm excited to see where the future of this channel goes. I will say that in the month of February, just so you all know, there will be a little bit of a lull in content. Now, I have some pre-recorded podcast episodes that will be released. And if you're on Patreon, you can watch them as they're uploaded. For those of you who aren't on Patreon, here on YouTube, they're gonna be released probably on like a weekly basis for season 2 of As the Cauldron Bubbles. So anyways, thank you all so much for listening to me rant and to me ramble. I am about to go to an appointment, and until next time, blessed be.